Welcome once again to the Brownstone, Wolfe's sanctuary of logic, orchids, and murder. Do tell us where in the world you're listening from, and don't hesitate to share your thoughts. If you enjoy these cases, consider liking and subscribing. Now then, shall we begin? Every good mystery deserves good company, and a little gratitude between cases. A warm thank you to Norma, our newest patron. Your support keeps the orchids blooming and the mysteries alive. Join the circle of mystery lovers on Patreon. Link in description. Nero Wolfe and the Dobermann in Wolfe's chair. The phone rang like it was biting, sharp and insistent, the kind of ring that doesn't wait politely for orchids or decency. Wolfe was upstairs in his plant rooms communing with his phalaenopsis, which meant I was the designated chew toy for whatever emergency wanted to ruin our evening. I considered letting it ring itself hoarse. Some people deserve the silence, but habit won. You never know when a ring means trouble, money, or both. Office of Nero Wolfe, I said, smooth as butter over a hot waffle iron. Archie Goodwin at your service, interpreter of genius. A woman's voice came through, breathy, frightened, and brittle around the edges. Please, Mr. Wolfe, I need him. There's been a murder. That word will wake up anyone, even a man who thinks exercise is a rumour. You've got him halfway, I told her. Mr. Wolfe's currently conferring with several thousand delicate personalities on the upper floor. I handle preliminary heartbreaks. Who's talking? Rita Vance, Manhattan Kennel Club. The name trembled. It's Bernard Latham, my partner. He's dead. Now, murder and dogs in the same sentence can mean anything from jealousy to bad breeding. How dead? I asked, because precision saves time. On the floor of the training room. There's blood everywhere. The police, oh God, the dog was there. You mean the murderer or the witness? My Dobermann, Kaiser. He was lying beside Bernard. His muzzle was bloody. Her voice cracked like glass in cold water. They think he did it. That earned a whistle from me. Lady, if your dog killed a man, the law's going to need more than biscuits to calm him. He didn't. I know he didn't. But they'll say anything. The papers, the club, I can't, please. Mr. Wolfe must help me. She wasn't hysterical, just cornered. Desperation has a rhythm, and she had the tempo perfect. All right, Miss Vance, don't faint yet. Bring yourself and a checkbook over to 35th Street. If you can dodge reporters and the pound, we'll hear your story. I'll come now, she said. The line clicked dead. I hung up and stared at the phone. Kennel Club, Dobermann, murder. It wasn't exactly the poetry of orchids, but it had bite. I buzzed the house line that led to the roof hothouse. A minute later, Wolfe's voice floated down like thunder wrapped in Latin. Archie? Why? Client, I called up. Female, in distress. Murder, dog, and scandal, your three favourite food groups. Confound it. The receiver went dead, which meant I had about 5 minutes before he descended like a reluctant deity. I took the time to clear the desk of unpaid bills and open the window an inch. Even genius needs air. At 7:48 p.m. the elevator purred and Wolfe emerged, immense and irritable, wearing his brown house jacket and the look of a man interrupted during divine contemplation. Explain, he commanded. I did, keeping it brisk. When I mentioned the Dobermann, he made a sound halfway between a snort and a pfui. Canines, he said, lowering himself into the red leather chair that groaned in sympathy. Their virtues are exaggerated by sentimentalists. What has this to do with me? She says her dog's framed for murder. So are politicians daily. She's coming here. He closed his eyes, possibly to pray for my extinction. Archie, my time is divided between orchids, meals, and thought. I have no intervals left for barking. Maybe not, but her retainer might howl. That opened one eye. How large? Judging by her voice, plenty. Judging by her panic, desperate. If we charge her the price of a pedigreed sin, she'll pay. He sighed, long and tragic. Very well, but if she smells of kennels, you will open the window again. I already did, he grunted approval. That was as close as Wolfe got to partnership harmony. While we waited, Fritz appeared at the door to announce dinner, veal paprika with dumplings. Wolfe's eyes softened, mine rolled. Later, Fritz, he said. We are expecting a victim of circumstance. Or the circumstance of a victim, I added. Fritz blinked politely and vanished. The doorbell rang at 8:06. I answered. Rita Vance was the kind of woman who could make tragedy look like a fashion statement. Early 30s, tailored navy suit, hat with netting, and eyes too wide for lying unless she'd practiced. Her gloves were pale grey. One held a silver dog whistle. The other clutched a purse like it was life's last investment. "Miss Vance," I said. "Come in before the neighbourhood starts barking." She stepped inside, glancing around as if the walls might judge her. The office smelled of books, leather, and Wolfe, meaning authority and beer cooling on the side table. She took in the man himself, behind the desk, hands folded like he was about to bless her or charge her interest. "Sit," he said. She did. Her voice wavered. "Mr. Wolfe, I know the police have their suspect, but it's wrong. Bernard Latham was my partner for 5 years. We bred champions. There was a break-in tonight. I found him. There was blood, and Kaiser was beside him. He looked as if he'd tried to protect him." "Protect?" Wolfe repeated. "You imply the animal's loyalty exceeds human capacity." "I raised him from a pup. He'd never attack anyone unless provoked." Wolfe sniffed. "Sentiment, Miss Vance, is the enemy of fact. Describe the scene precisely." She did, in choppy sentences. The training room, overturned bench, blood on the leash, door ajar. Latham's head struck by a brass grooming brush. No sign of forced entry, at least none she'd seen before the police arrived. And the whistle, she found it on the floor near him. I took notes, though I was mostly watching her hands. They shook, yes, but controlled, the kind of shake that comes from fear and training at once. When she was done, Wolfe leaned back, steepling his fingers. "You are accused of what, exactly?" "Manslaughter. They say I lost my temper over a sale, but Bernard was alive when I left the office this afternoon. We quarrelled, yes, but he'd have forgiven me, he always did." I said, "Forgiveness is a two-way leash, Miss Vance. Sometimes it snaps." She shot me a look that could have curled a collar. Wolfe frowned at me, his way of saying I'd exceeded the joke quota. "Archie, control your tongue. It is an unruly appendage." "Sure, but occasionally useful." He ignored me. "Miss Vance, the police will inspect every inch of your business and your life. They will find what they seek, perhaps truth, perhaps publicity. Why should I interfere?" "Because you see things they don't," she said quickly. "Everyone thinks I killed him or the dog did. But someone else was there, I know it, and the papers will ruin me before I can prove it." "Pfui! The press has no muzzle. What do you expect me to do?" "Find who did it, before Kramer decides to hang me with a leash." At the mention of Kramer, Wolfe grunted. "Inspector Kramer is many things, but not a fool. He requires evidence. If you are innocent, his methods will exonerate you." She lifted her chin. "His methods already have me guilty in tomorrow's edition." That landed. Wolfe hated trial by headline more than trial by jury. He folded his hands. "Your retainer?" She opened her purse, pulled out an envelope. 500 now, another 1,000 if you take the case." Wolfe's eyebrows twitched. Small earthquakes in a large country. "Archie," he said, "deposit it." I took it like a midwife taking a newborn check. "Welcome to the kennel, Miss Vance." She managed a tremulous smile. "I don't care what it costs. Just keep them from taking Kaiser away." I could have told her that dogs in custody usually fared better than people, but I let it slide. Wolfe had the floor again. "I accept on condition that you speak truth. If I discover deceit, the fee returns untouched and you depart. Understood?" "Yes," he nodded. "Very well. Archie will visit your kennel tomorrow to examine the scene. You will provide him access and introductions. Meanwhile, you will say nothing to the press." She agreed and rose. Her glove slipped. The silver whistle fell to the carpet. I picked it up. Blood had seeped into the engraved grooves, dark and dried. I handed it back. "Souvenir of a rough day," I said. Her eyes met mine, briefly, haunted. "Bernard always wore it. I don't know how it ended up there." Wolfe spoke quietly. "Indeed. Archie, note that." Already did. I tucked the detail away with the others. Blood, dog, brush, and now whistle. The evening was getting crowded. When she left, the silence settled like dust after a parade. Wolfe leaned back and closed his eyes. "I detest dogs." "You detest people more," I reminded him. "That is no recommendation." He pressed the bell cord. Moments later, Fritz appeared with beer. Wolfe accepted a glass as though it were penance. "Nevertheless, we shall see if reason can untangle this leash." "Sure, and if it can't?" Then the dog may not be the only one to howl. I grinned. Good thing I'm housebroken. He ignored me again and sipped beer like a judge delivering sentence to the world. The office smelled of malt and trouble. Outside, Manhattan kept barking. Morning in the brownstone has its own tempo. Quiet, steady, and designed entirely around one man's digestion. By 10:30, the orchids were back to whispering their secrets upstairs. Fritz was humming in the kitchen about veal stock, and I was at my desk pretending to update expense notes when our client reappeared like a bad headline that hadn't finished printing. Rita Vance came in looking as if she'd slept inside a thunderstorm, pressed, painted, and one nerve short of snapping. The navy suit was fresh, the circles under her eyes weren't. She sat down without being asked, which earned her a single eyebrow from Wolfe, freshly planted behind his desk like a statue that had outgrown marble. "Miss Vance," he said, "you have returned early. I infer you survived the night without arrest." She gave a brittle laugh. "Barely. The police questioned me until 2. They say I was the last person seen with Bernard. One of the handlers saw us arguing at the club. They found the brush, his grooming brush, beside him." "Describe it." "It's brass, heavy. The handle is engraved BL and Company. He had a set made for our kennel." Wolfe's fingers steepled, his eyes half closed. "A singular vanity. And this witness, who?" "A man named Hume, Charles Hume. He manages Crown Line Kennels for us, up in Westchester. He claims he saw Bernard and me quarrelling in the afternoon." I leaned back, pen poised. "Was that before or after you decided to hit him with company property?" Her head jerked up. "I didn't hit him." Wolfe sighed. "Archie, your levity is not required before luncheon." "Neither is my charm, but it comes free." I scribbled the note anyway. Rita took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I went to the club that night because Bernard wanted to discuss a sale. He'd found a buyer for Kaiser, a shipping magnate's wife in Chicago. I refused. Kaiser's mine. Bernard said the kennel couldn't afford sentimentality." Wolfe nodded once, as if she'd just recited a dull passage from the Federal Register. "And this quarrel was observed?" "Yes, but I left before 8. He was alive when I left." "Yet dead when you returned." Her jaw tightened. "That's what they say." I couldn't resist. "In my experience, that's usually accurate." She shot me another glare, and Wolfe lifted a finger, his version of a parental hand slap. "Enough, Archie." Then to her, "Why come to me? You have counsel." "My lawyer told me to keep quiet. But he doesn't believe me either. They've impounded Kaiser. The police think his bite marks prove he attacked Bernard." Wolfe's lips pursed like an offended judge. A sentient creature imprisoned for bureaucratic convenience. Phooey. That phooey carried weight. It meant moral offence, not indigestion. "I've raised that dog from a pup," she said softly. "He's loyal, protective, but not violent. If they keep him locked up, he'll die of fright." I said, "Dogs don't die of fright, Miss Vance. People do, usually after seeing the bill." She ignored me, eyes locked on Wolfe. "Please, you can clear this up. Everyone says you can." Wolfe leaned back, fingers tented like an architect considering the flaw in a design. "Miss Vance, sentiment again rears its head. Nevertheless, you have stirred my curiosity. Not about the killing, I am daily surrounded by corpses of reason, but about the dog." Her brows drew together. "You mean you'll take the case?" "Perhaps." He closed his eyes briefly. "If I do, it is on the usual condition. You will speak only the truth. If you deceive me, your money will return untouched and your person will depart unheeded." "I understand." "Good. Archie." "Yes, sir?" "You will telephone Inspector Kramer. Inform him that I have accepted an engagement tangential to his current investigation." Rita gasped. "You'll tell him?" "Of course," Wolfe said sharply. "I do not skulk behind official curtains. It is courteous to notify the constabulary before treading on their toes." I dialed the precinct and waited while the line clicked through layers of disinterest. Kramer's voice finally came on, thick with cigar smoke even over the wire. "Yeah? Kramer?" "Goodwin here," I said cheerfully. "My employer's about to make your morning interesting." There was a pause, a sigh. "Put him on." Wolfe took the receiver as though it were a relic contaminated by fingerprints. "Inspector, good morning." Wolfe, Kramer growled, I hear you've got your fingers near my kennel case. I have no fingers near anything. A lady has engaged my services to correct an error of assumption. If that distresses you, resign. You can't resist, can you? The tone softened, but only slightly. Just don't muddy the works. We've got statements, evidence, and a dead man with a smashed skull. You start cross-examining witnesses and somebody'll clam up. I intend only to clarify, Wolfe said. I presume you prefer clarity to confusion? Kramer's exhale came through like steam. I prefer results. If you turn up anything useful, call me before you print it in a magazine. I leave vulgar publication to others. He hung up with a click that sounded like resignation in hard shoes. Wolfe handed me the receiver. There, Archie. You see? Civil discourse is possible even among carnivores. Sure, I said, so long as one of them's behind a desk the size of a small nation. Rita managed a ghost of a smile, but the anxiety stayed. So, you'll really help me? Yes, Wolfe said, for the sake of the dog's dignity, if not your own. Now, this kennel of yours, where precisely? In Westchester, 20 acres, staff of 6. Archie will visit. He has an eye for physical absurdities. I have 2, actually, I said, both fully trained. Take care not to use them frivolously. Observe the premises. Ascertain whether the brush, this weapon, belongs uniquely to the victim. Rita nodded. It does. He had it monogrammed. All his brushes and combs, BL and Company. He said it looked professional. That, Miss Vance, may prove your salvation or your ruin. Wolfe shifted in his chair, a monumental adjustment. Was Mr. Latham a man of temper? She hesitated. He could be exacting. In what sense? He wanted perfection. In the dogs, the staff, the clients. He could charm anyone at a show, but with me, he was demanding, sometimes cruel. Her tone softened, almost affectionate under the bruises. I'd heard that note before, the melody of regret. I jotted a quiet reminder. Possible motive. Resentment, affection, money mix. Wolfe opened his eyes, studying her. Did he have enemies? She gave a tired laugh. In our business, dozens. People fight over breeding rights the way tycoons fight over oil fields. We deal in bloodlines, Mr. Wolfe. Pride and jealousy come built in. Indeed. Wolfe reached for a notepad and wrote 2 words, underlining both. Pedigree fraud. I made a note to ask later. At that moment, the elevator door clanked softly and Fritz appeared, announcing lunch in the formal tone of a man declaring an armistice. Lunch is ready, Mr. Wolfe. Wolfe lifted a hand. Delay 15 minutes. Yes, sir, Rita rose, uncertain. I can go if— No, Wolfe interrupted. Eat you must not, but leave you shall not, until I have concluded. He turned to me. Archie, the brush. I'll see what I can dig up. Maybe Kramer will let me sniff around evidence control. Pfui, he will not. You will, however, locate the manufacturer. BL and Company is insufficient. A craftsman marks his wares distinctively. Right. I'll get Saul on it if needed. Excellent. He exhaled, the decision sealed. Miss Vance, you will go home. Keep to your residence until further notice. Should the police summon you, you will attend, but you will say nothing beyond fact. You are now under my protection. Her eyes filled slightly. Thank you. Do not thank me. I dislike effusion. He rang the bell cord for Fritz again, signalling dismissal with style. I escorted her to the door. On the threshold she paused, clutching the purse. Mr. Goodwin, do you believe me? I looked at her. The lipstick was perfect. The fear underneath wasn't. Lady, in my business, belief comes after proof, but you're paying for the attempt. She nodded faintly and left. When I turned back, Wolfe was already addressing the universe. The world of dogs, Archie, is a mirror of man's preposterous self-regard. We breed for traits we no longer possess. Loyalty, strength, intelligence. Yeah, I said, and some of us just bark for the fun of it. He glared, then pushed himself up by inches. Lunch. Fritz reappeared, ushering us toward the dining room where veal and dumplings waited. Wolfe began eating with the concentration of a saint contemplating sin. Between bites he mused aloud. This woman is frightened, but not solely of accusation. There is something else, an absence of grief. "Maybe she's fresh out," I said. "Morning's expensive. Or convenient." He set down his fork. "Archie, after lunch you will visit this kennel. Speak to the manager, Hume. Bring back photographs, statements, anything that smells of deceit. And observe the dog." Observe him doing what? Being innocent or pretending to be. Animals rarely lie. Humans do it by reflex. Fritz cleared plates with the efficiency of a diplomat removing evidence. When we returned to the office, Wolfe poured himself a beer and motioned to the notebook. "You will record today's interview under Vance Rita. Include mention of the brass brush and the initials. Detail Kramer's call." I typed while he dictated, the keys clicking like rain on old pavement. It was his form of meditation, language arranged into obedience. When I finished, he nodded. "You will leave at 2:30. The Heron is gassed?" "Full tank and one law-abiding driver." "Then proceed. Do not antagonize the police if they are present." "I'll behave," I promised. "You will attempt," he corrected. I put on my hat and headed for the door. "If I don't come back by dinner, have Fritz save me a dumpling." "Pfui, you will return. Trouble is allergic to you. It flees when you approach." That was Wolfe's idea of affection, and I took it as such. As I stepped out into the crisp noon air, I couldn't help grinning. Dogs, dames and murder. Manhattan might have been running low on integrity, but business was thriving. Back upstairs, Wolfe's voice drifted faintly through the open window, already dictating notes to himself about pedigrees and pride. I figured by the time I hit Westchester, he'd have half the case solved, at least the part that didn't require walking. The rest, as usual, was up to me. If you've ever wondered what a fortune smells like, drive up to Westchester and take a deep breath behind a kennel full of champion dogs. The air's half perfume, half disinfectant, with a garnish of ambition. By the time I pulled the Heron into the gravel lot at Crown Line Kennels, the afternoon sun had started baking both the gravel and my optimism. A hand-painted sign announced Crown Line Kennels, breeders of distinction. It looked impressive until you noticed the bottom edge curling like it was embarrassed by its own slogan. The place sprawled across rolling green acres dotted with paddocks, training runs, and a long cedar building that smelled like money trying to disguise itself as fresh air. I was greeted by a chorus of barks that could have doubled for applause or warning. A Dobermann somewhere behind the runs was making his opinion of strangers abundantly clear. I told him cheerfully, "Relax, pal, I'm only here to sniff around," which didn't improve his mood. Inside the main building, the scent shifted from soap to stale coffee and dog biscuits. The office had mahogany trim and an expensive desk scarred by careless ambition. A wall of trophies gleamed under dust, and in the corner, a framed portrait of Bernard Latham stared down at me with the polite arrogance of a man who expected applause even after death. Behind the desk sat Charles Hume, the kennel manager. He was built narrow and neat, the sort of man who looked like he'd ironed his tie while wearing it. His hair was oiled and parted with surgical precision, and his voice, when he greeted me, was a monotone that could have been recorded once and replayed for all future occasions. "Mr. Goodwin, I assume. Miss Vance called to warn me you were coming." "Warn you? I don't bite, not unless provoked." He didn't smile. "She said you're an investigator, Mr. Wolfe's assistant." "Right again. You've heard of him?" "Everyone in the dog world has. He once solved a poisoning case involving a German shepherd in—" He stopped abruptly, realizing he was giving me more than he meant. "Anyway, how can I help?" "Let's start with Bernard Latham," I said, leaning against the desk. "You were his right-hand man. How's it feel being promoted by homicide?" He stiffened. "I'm not in charge. Miss Vance owns the majority share." "Uh-huh, but she's under suspicion, which makes you the de facto alpha, doesn't it?" A faint flush climbed his neck. "If you're implying—" "I'm implying nothing. Wolfe does the implying, I just collect the scraps." He cleared his throat and gestured toward the window. "The police have already examined everything. You're wasting your time." "That's what they said about fingerprints in 1910. Mind if I take a look around anyway?" He hesitated, then shrugged. "Suit yourself. Just don't upset the dogs. They're already agitated." "That makes two of us." I left him simmering and stepped into the long kennel corridor. The air vibrated with low growls and the occasional sharp bark, like an orchestra tuning up for chaos. Rows of gleaming cages lined both sides. Each was labelled in gold lettering: Crown Lines Victor, Crown Lines Duchess, Crown Lines Kaiser. Kaiser's cage was empty except for a worn blanket and a steel water bowl. The lock on his door hung crooked, the latch twisted as if someone had forced it in a hurry. I crouched to inspect it, running a finger over the bent metal. There were muddy boot prints just outside the run, large, wide, and smudged in a way that didn't match Rita Vance's tidy shoes from the night before. A woman's voice broke in behind me. "You shouldn't be in there." I turned. She was young, mid-20s maybe, wearing a kennel smock and the kind of nervous expression usually reserved for people expecting cross-examination. "Loretta Dean?" I asked. She nodded, clutching a clipboard like a shield. "I help Mr. Hume. Feedings, exercise, grooming. The police already asked me everything." "Lucky you. I'm friendlier than they are, but less patient." She tried to smile and failed. "I really can't talk about it." "You just did. Keep going." Her hands tightened on the clipboard. "Mr. Latham was difficult, demanding, but he was good to the dogs. He had a way with them, like he understood what they were thinking." Maybe one of them returned the compliment. She flinched. Kaiser didn't do it. Then who did? Her eyes darted toward Hume's office window, where his silhouette loomed against the frosted glass. "I don't know. I didn't see anything. I heard shouting, but that was earlier. Miss Vance left before it happened." "Sure she did," I said lightly, watching her reaction. Her lips parted, maybe to protest, but she swallowed the words and turned away. "Look," she said finally, "if you want answers, check Mr. Latham's desk. He kept records of everything, sales, clients, even breeding certificates. He was careful." That was either a helpful clue or an invitation to be arrested for trespassing. I took the risk. Back in the office, Hume was pretending to study invoices, but mostly watching me like I was about to rearrange his reputation. "Finished?" he asked. "Almost. I'd like to see the file drawer." He folded his arms. "That's private property." "Sure. So is murder evidence." We stared at each other until he decided I was the kind of visitor who didn't go away easily. With a muttered curse, he yanked open the bottom drawer. Inside were stacks of folders labelled by dog names, show entries, and payment receipts. I flipped through until something caught my eye, a yellowed newspaper clipping pinned to the back wall of the drawer. The headline read, "Pedigree Scandal Rocks Dog Show Circuit. Forgery Suspected." Below it was a grainy photo of Bernard Latham shaking hands with a judge, both looking like they'd just buried the hatchet in someone else's back. "Old history," Hume said quickly. "That was years ago. Nothing came of it." "Then why keep the clipping?" He hesitated. "Sentiment. Bernard liked to remember how he beat the accusations." "Or how close they came," I said. His jaw tightened. "If you think this means something..." "I don't think. Wolfe does that. I just notice things he can think about later." The phone on the desk rang. I picked it up before Hume could protest. "Crown Line Kennels," I said. A voice like melted butter and authority rolled through. "Archie, report." "Hello, Maestro," I said. "You'd enjoy the view. Acres of grass, miles of ego, and a faint aroma of cover-up. Details, not scenery." "Right. Empty cage with a busted latch, muddy prints too big for our client, and a clipping about a pedigree forgery from the good old days." A pause long enough for a beer sip. "You are my eyes, not my tongue. Do not interpret, merely observe." And here I thought I was the tail that wags the genius. "Phooey, I wag nothing. You will remain until 4, then return. No speculation to anyone." "Understood. I'll try not to bark up the wrong tree." He hung up before I could congratulate myself on the pun. Hume was glaring. "You had no right to answer that." "It's all right," I said. "The boss forgives me anything under felony." I wandered to the window, pretending interest in the exercise yard. The afternoon light made the paddocks look almost idyllic. But the dogs weren't fooled. They prowled behind their fences like inmates waiting for visiting hour. "Tell me, Mr. Hume," I said, "what's your take on Miss Vance?" "She's emotional, jealous. She thought Bernard favoured me." "Did he?" "Professionally," he said, too fast. "I handled the finances. He trusted me." "Sure he did, until somebody bashed his skull in with a brush." He rose from his chair, anger colouring his tidy composure. "If you're implying..." "I'm implying I should head back to Manhattan before the dogs start taking sides." I picked up the clipping and waved it. "Mind if I borrow a copy?" He snatched it from my hand. "You mind my business, Mr. Goodwin. That scandal's dead and buried." So was Latham the last time I saw him. History has a way of digging itself up. Loretta appeared in the doorway again, eyes wide. "Mr. Hume, the delivery van's here." "Fine," he snapped, brushing past her. When he was gone, she whispered, "Be careful. He hates outsiders." "Lady, in my line of work, that's a compliment." I left the office, strolling past the cages one last time. A setter whined softly, tail thumping. The air was heavy with disinfectant and something else, tension maybe, or deceit. They smell alike when the sun's low. As I reached the car, I glanced back. Hume was standing in the doorway, watching me, face unreadable. Loretta was beside him, head turned away. Between them the kennel stretched silent, except for one distant bark that echoed like an accusation. I jotted a note before starting the engine. Broken latch, wrong footprints, scared assistant, angry manager, old forgery. It was the kind of mix Wolfe liked, a pedigree of lies ready for breeding. I drove off, the gravel crunching under the tires, and thought how Wolfe would phrase it later over beer. Man's attempt to purify nature results only in the corruption of both. Personally, I preferred coffee. Still, as the city skyline rose ahead, I couldn't shake the sound of those dogs, half warning, half grief. Somewhere among them was truth, wagging its tail in the dark, waiting to be called. The Gazette hit the stoop at 6:30 with the thud of a bad verdict, and by the time I carried it in, the headline was shouting like it owned the block. "Dog diva suspect in kennel murder." The type was big enough to terrify a mastiff. I laid it on Wolfe's desk with the care you'd give a live grenade. He didn't touch it. He stared at it the way a botanist studies fungus, curious, disdainful, and already composing a Latin insult. "Vulgar," he said at last. "A libel-wearing shoe polish." "It's the evening edition," I said. "Tomorrow they'll add adjectives and a photograph of somebody who isn't our client." That earned me a noise halfway between a growl and a pfui. Wolfe hates scandal like other men hate famine. It was 7:15, dangerously close to dinner, and Fritz's veal paprika with dumplings was waiting in the wings. Public disgrace has excellent timing. It always arrives before dessert. The phone rang at 7:18. I caught it. "Goodwin speaking." "Lon," said the voice, warm, smoky, and as reliable as yesterday's news. "Before you read past the fold, I want you to know this isn't my doing. The kennel crowd's been feeding the trough all afternoon. Rita's rivals are ladling gossip by the bucket." "Names?" "Off the record. Trudy Vale and a man named Phipps. Both breed setters and neither can breed silence. On the record, sources close to the investigation. My editor's one of them." "Any mention of a brush?" "Only metaphorically. But listen, Archie, if your boss doesn't issue a statement, some intern will invent one. Tell the intern to spell pfui correctly." I covered the mouthpiece. "Wolfe, the press wants a quote." He made a sound like cold syrup. "Tell Mr. Cohen this. Mr. Wolfe deplores premature conclusions and premature journalists alike." I relayed it. Lon chuckled faintly. "Fair enough. Also, you might want to close the blinds. There's a stringer outside your stoop taking notes on your curtains. If he writes what he sees, he'll win a Pulitzer for beige." I hung up and turned to Wolfe. "The Gazette's baying for blood. Ours." "Pfui. They confuse notoriety with knowledge." His gaze drifted to the paper again. "They have made a circus of loyalty, both canine and human." "You mean Kaiser?" "I mean Miss Vance," he said sharply. "The woman is reckless but not depraved. I dislike injustice even when it whines." He reached for the bell cord. "Our inquiry is compromised. Trace the leak." Lon gave me 2 names, Vale and Phipps. "I'll start there after dinner." "You will start before." "Fritz will mutiny." "Fritz is Swiss. He will reheat." Right on cue, Fritz appeared in the doorway, haloed in steam and patience. "Dinner at 8, Mr. Wolfe." "At 8:05. Reason is under assault." Fritz nodded, martyrdom in motion, and withdrew. I eyed the retreating tray with the despair of a condemned man who can smell the feast. At 7:41, the doorbell buzzed. I opened it and found Inspector Kramer planted on the stoop, hat low, cigar burning like a personal philosophy. His coat smelled of rain and precinct. "Evening, Inspector," I said. "We were just talking about you." "Save it," he muttered, brushing past. In the office, he dropped into a chair without waiting for gravity's permission. Wolfe's eyebrows rose a millimetre, the equivalent of shouting. Kramer gave the headline one sour glance. "You see what happens when civilians poke around an open case?" "I see what happens when the police fail to close windows," Wolfe replied. "Flies enter." Kramer grunted. "I don't have flies. I have evidence. That brush of yours, wiped clean. But there was a dog hair caught in the bristles." "Let me guess," I said. "Not the right breed." "Retriever," Kramer said flatly. "Not Dobermann, pale, long, coarse." Wolfe's brows climbed another notch. "Intriguing." "Don't get smug," Kramer snapped. "Could be transfer from the kennel floor. Still, it messes up a tidy theory, which I hate." Wolfe folded his hands. "Mess inspector is only order awaiting classification." "Spare me the sermon." He jabbed the paper. "This kind of noise makes witnesses clam up. You want to help? Keep your mouthpiece here from stirring the kennel." "He is not a mouthpiece," Wolfe said coldly. "He is an organ of perception." Kramer's cigar wobbled. "Well, make sure your organ doesn't toot on my beat." I grinned. "You wound me, Inspector. I only toot under direction." "Cut the vaudeville." He reached into his pocket and produced a small glassine envelope. Inside, a single hair gleamed like gold wire. "You don't get to keep it, but you can know it exists. We'll lab match it. If a retriever's been near that brush, I'll find it." "Excellent," Wolfe murmured. "Do inform me if you discover who cleans murder weapons yet neglects one filament. Such sloppiness offends both science and decency." Kramer stood. "You sound like a judge and look like a witness I can't subpoena. Keep it that way." He hesitated. "For what it's worth, the vet says the blood on Kaiser's muzzle might be transfer. Don't quote me." "I never quote hearsay," Wolfe said. "That's the press's vocation." Kramer grunted. "Lon Cohen said you're planning to clarify. Do me a favor. Clarify to me first." "I shall when facts ripen," Wolfe replied. "Unripe fruit poisons the palate." "Yeah? Well, homicide gives indigestion." He jammed his hat back on. "Good night." After he left, silence pooled thick as gravy. Wolfe sighed. I folded the Gazette shut. He brought a gift and took it home again. "A courtesy," Wolfe corrected, "which is rarer than cooperation." At 8 o'clock sharp, Fritz returned, hovering with professional despair. Wolfe waved him off for 5 minutes more, and Fritz departed like a saint denied communion. "So," I said, "we have a hair from the wrong dog, a pack of liars, and a newspaper that wants to turn our client into a chew toy. What's the angle?" "The press," Wolfe said, "is a pack that chases what it's fed. Someone has tossed them a bone." "Trudy Vale and Phipps. Red herrings. They bark, but they lack teeth. The true leak is quieter. Someone accustomed to paper." "Paper meaning newsprint?" "Paper meaning pedigrees, certificates, forgery." His eyes narrowed. The kennel's past scandal was not ancient history. It was rehearsal. "Then I'll find who's writing the encore." "Do. Begin with the Kennel Club bureaucracy. Clerks with expensive habits are more revealing than bloodlines." The front bell rang again at 8:03. I groaned. If that's the Gazette, I'm training a retriever to bite reporters. I went out and came back with a messenger boy and a sealed envelope addressed to Nero Wolfe in handwriting that could win awards for arrogance. Wolfe slit it and read. His eyes went still. He passed it across. The note was typed. "Stop chasing ghosts. Dog papers are clean. Ask your boy to look under the run, not in the drawers. A friend to animals." I whistled. Either a Samaritan or a wise guy. "Neither," Wolfe said. "A conductor directing our attention. Under the run, that would be Kaiser's enclosure at Crown Line." "Meaning I go back to Westchester?" "Immediately. Kramer will love that. He will recover. He has ample bile." Wolfe reached for the bell cord. "Fritz." This time Fritz entered instantly, hopeful. "Dinner?" "Yes," Wolfe said. "Now." Then to me, "Eat, rest, and go at first light. If there is something under that dog's run, I prefer you find it before the press, or the police do." Fritz unveiled the veal. The aroma was enough to make a confession. Wolfe ate like a philosopher, slow and deliberate. I matched him, and lost. At 8:27 I rose, grabbed my hat, and pocketed the note. "Anything else?" "Caution," he said. "You have a talent for provoking guilt in the innocent. Tonight, limit it to the guilty." "That's why you keep me," I told him. "I make people confess to jaywalking." He gave a low grunt, his version of affection. "Report from the site. If detained, I will act." "Call Kramer?" "Or Lon Cohen," he said, "depending which pack bites softer." I tipped my hat and left. Outside, the street smelled of ink and drizzle. Behind me, the brownstone settled into ritual, clink of cutlery, faint hum of the elevator carrying Wolfe to his orchids. I climbed into the Heron, started the engine, and thought about the note. Somebody wanted me to look under the run, which meant something, or someone, didn't belong there. If the press was hungry for a bone, I intended to find out who buried it, and whether it still had teeth. If there's one thing I've learned about the Lower East Side, it's that every corner sells something forged: dreams, watches, or morality. The rain had been making up its mind for hours, spitting at gutters and turning every awning into a drum. I parked the Heron near Delancey and found Saul Pantzer leaning in the doorway of a print shop, so discreet it barely existed. "Inside," he said, tugging his cap down. "Name's Manny Greco, real artist with a rubber stamp. Does the Kennel Club's dirty laundry, if you pay him." "Lovely. The man who makes poodles pure and crooks respectable." Saul gave me the kind of half-smile he saves for sinners. "You're the talker. I'll tail him when he bolts." Optimist. The shop smelled of ink and turpentine. A single bulb hung low, turning the counter-clerk's bald head into a moon. Behind him, through a partition, I spotted a man hunched over a press. Short, wiry, with the nervous hands of someone allergic to honesty. Manny Greco. He looked up when I entered, suspicious before I even lied. "We're closed," he said. "Then you work fast," I told him, flashing a smile. "Name's Arlen. Arlen Brooks. Got a breeding problem." He blinked. "A what?" "Pedigree papers. Couple of dates got smudged, if you catch my drift. I hear you can, restore them." His shoulders relaxed slightly, suspicion melting into greed. "Depends who told you." "Friend from Crown Line Kennels, the fancy one upstate." That froze him. His ink-stained fingers tightened around the roller. "Never heard of it." "Sure you have. Bernard Latham, Rita Vance, you fixed their litter certificates last month." He turned pale under the grime. "Look, I don't—" "Relax," I said easily. "I'm not from the DA. I'm just trying to make a few names line up before a dog show. Nobody's looking for trouble." Greco licked his lips, eyes darting toward the front window. "Who sent you?" "Somebody who said you were the best in the city. So far, you're proving them right by sweating in all the right places." He swallowed. Okay. Maybe I did a couple papers for Crown Line, minor corrections, nothing criminal." "Of course. Criminal's such an ugly word." He hesitated, then leaned closer. "They paid good. The guy who came said it was to fix a birth date, make a sire look younger. Fancy talker, not the breeder type." "Describe him." "Tall, overcoat, gold cufflinks. Spoke like he owned the street. Had a monogrammed briefcase, CH or something." "Did he mention his line of work?" "Just said he was downtown, in legal circles." Before I could push for more, the front door squeaked. Greco's head snapped toward it, instincts faster than guilt. Then he bolted through the back like a rabbit with a conscience. "Saul!" I yelled, charging after him. The alley outside was a slick ribbon of rain and trash. Greco darted between crates, slipping once but recovering with the agility of a man who'd outrun decency before. I followed, my shoes slapping puddles, my lungs protesting the abuse. "Stop! You'll wrinkle your record." He didn't. He veered into a side street lined with bars that smelled like old gin and bad memories. A cab honked as we tore across its path. I was in better shape than the pavement, but not by much. Saul appeared from the next corner like fate wearing a flat cap. One move and Greco was pinned against a brick wall, wheezing and furious. "Easy," Saul said. "Nobody's biting." I caught up, bent double, and announced, "Congratulations, Manny. You've just won the sprinting category for the Kennel Club's Underworld division." Greco glared. "You can't prove anything." "True," I said, "but Wolfe can deduce everything, and he doesn't like running, so he'll make me do it again if you don't talk." Saul's grip tightened. "Who hired you?" "I told you, A guy from downtown. Said he was a lawyer, maybe a cop. Paid cash, neat bills. Wanted all Crown Line's pedigrees adjusted. Birth dates, sires, champions. Said it was clean-up, not fraud. Sure, I said. And Al Capone was a tax reformer. Greco scowled. That's all I know, honest. Saul looked at me. We done? Yeah. I pulled a card from my pocket. If you remember anything, call that number. If you forget it, don't worry. Kramer's boys will remind you. We left him trembling and took refuge in a nearby bar that looked like it had been mopped with despair. Saul ordered coffee. I settled for ginger ale. He's scared, Saul said. Not of cops, of whoever hired him. Which means downtown's dirtier than uptown. I'll tell Wolfe. He loves grime. It justifies cleaning. By the time I got back to the brownstone, it was past 9. Fritz met me at the door, eyebrows mournful. Dinner is long concluded. Tell the veal it's forgiven, I said, and headed for the office. Wolfe was at his desk, surrounded by quiet and civilization. He didn't look up. Well? Greco's a forger with fast feet and a bad sense of direction. He admits fixing pedigrees for Crown Line hired by someone with initials CH, downtown, legal type. Fancy coat, gold cufflinks. Wolfe's eyes gleamed. Charles Hume, perhaps? Could be. He fits the letters and the manners. Do not assume, Wolfe warned. Inference must earn its bread. He reached for his beer, took a contemplative sip, and continued. A lawyer or officer would have both authority and motive to protect a client or himself. The forged pedigrees were not to deceive buyers. They were to erase a transaction, a sale involving illicit profit. Dogs as laundering instruments? Precisely. Breeding as business, business as disguise, a charming metaphor for civilization. Greco says he was told it was clean-up work. Then he was lied to, as are all intermediaries. Wolfe set down his glass. Someone in authority, downtown, suppressed scandal by altering bloodlines on paper, a convenient echo of human society. You're getting poetic. Pfui, prosaic. Continue surveillance of Mr. Hume. Engage Saul for discretion. Already done. Saul loves discretion almost as much as coffee. Wolfe leaned back, folding his hands. Archie, the next time you pursue a criminal through the rain, do not ruin your shoes. Fritz is not a cobbler. I'll try wearing wings. He ignored that, which was his way of approving. We are approaching the marrow, Archie. The bones rattle, the dogs will soon howl. I grinned. Fine by me. I've already got the leash. He closed his eyes. Good. Now silence. I must think. I typed up my report while the office settled into the usual peace. Fritz's soft tread, rain against the glass, Wolfe's breathing like a clock measuring logic. When I finished, I left the sheet on his desk and turned out the light. Behind me, he murmured, "Thank you, Archie." That, from Nero Wolfe, was practically affection. The morning papers were still wet when the call came in, and so was my coffee. Kramer's voice growled through the receiver like gravel in a blender. Wolfe there? He's cultivating orchids, I said. They don't argue back. Good. You can tell him Greco's dead. That wrung a blink out of me. The forger? When? Last night. Poisoned. Looks like a fast job. Cheap whiskey, clean delivery. No prints. And before you ask, yes, it stinks of connection. Meaning someone wanted him permanently retired. Kramer grunted. Meaning your boss was right about the forgery angle. Don't quote me. I wouldn't dream of it. See that you don't. He hung up before Wolfe could earn his admiration in person. I put the receiver down, turned toward the stairs and called up. Bad news, boss. Our forger just took early retirement, final pension plan. The elevator hummed, then opened. Wolfe came down with the expression of a man resigned to civilization's decline. Poison? Kramer's word. Predictable. He settled into his chair, folded his hands and stared at the yellow note cards on his desk, as if they'd offended logic. Elimination of intermediaries is the mark of either efficiency or fear. In this case, both. He gestured for my notebook. I flipped it open. Greco said he was hired by a man from downtown. Legal circles. Monogrammed briefcase with CH. Could that fit Charles Hume? Could, Wolfe said. So could 100 others. Could is the most pernicious word in English. Maybe, I said. but it's also how most crimes start. He ignored that, which meant he didn't disagree. The office felt heavier than usual, as if the orchids upstairs were mourning. Fritz entered silently to deposit the morning mail. Wolfe sifted through it, extracted one envelope and frowned. "For Miss Vance," he said. "Fan mail." "Postmarked 8th Avenue, typed, unpleasant." He slit it open. Inside was a single sheet, cheap bond paper, and 5 words that made the temperature drop. "Dogs aren't the only ones who can be put down." I whistled softly. "Subtle." "Typewritten," Wolfe murmured. "Stationery identical to the kennel's invoices. The threat is deliberate, not emotional." "Looks like somebody's cleaning house." "At least attempting to." He pressed the bell cord. "Fritz, telephone Miss Vance. Ask her to come immediately." Fritz vanished, efficiency wrapped in discretion. While we waited, I typed up the morning notes. Greco's death, Hume's possible connection, the anonymous warning, Wolfe's silence. The clack of keys filled the room like rain on tin. When I finished, I said, "You realize Kramer's probably already decided it's our client's fault again." "Let him," Wolfe said. "Premature certainty is the policeman's occupational disease." At 11:07, the doorbell rang. Rita Vance entered pale, gloved and shaking, like someone who'd opened a door to find the air poisoned. Fritz took her coat and retreated. "I got your message," she said, voice trembling. "What's happened?" Wolfe inclined his head. "Sit. You've received correspondence." She stared at the note. Her hands, already unsteady, turned white around it. "Oh God, this means they know I came here, that I talked to you." "Not necessarily," Wolfe said evenly. "It may be intended to provoke panic, not confession." "It's working," I said helpfully. She shot me a look that could have frozen a dogfight. "Who would do this?" she whispered. "Someone who believes intimidation can silence you," Wolfe replied, "or someone who hopes you'll flee and thereby confirm guilt." "I swear I haven't lied." Wolfe regarded her for a long moment. "Perhaps not, but you have omitted something." She flinched. "What do you mean?" "Your fear is too specific. You are not merely frightened. You are expecting a consequence." She stopped, fingers twisting her gloves. "I told you everything." "Pfui, not yet." He turned to me. "Archie, describe the envelope." "Standard size, postmarked last night, typed on the same paper Crownline uses for billing, and the typeface looks like an Elite 12. Have your lab check it against her apartment machine. If I were guessing, I'd say someone raided the office supplies." "Then," Wolfe said, "the threat originated close to the kennel, not from the street." Rita's voice cracked. "Charles? No, he couldn't." "Mr. Hume could and did many things," Wolfe said mildly, "but whether this is his work remains to be proven." She rose abruptly. "I can't stay here. If they're watching—" "You will stay," Wolfe interrupted, the tone pure granite. "You will compose yourself. Fritz will prepare tea. Fear feeds folly. You have had enough of both." That calmed her just enough to sit again. Fritz appeared with a tray as if he'd been born anticipating crises. She took the cup with both hands. Wolfe watched her sip, then said quietly, "Miss Vance, I will require a list of everyone with access to your office supplies and typewriter, including the cleaning staff." "All right," she murmured. "I'll write it out." When she began scribbling, Wolfe leaned toward me. "Archie, telephone Inspector Kramer. Inform him of Mr. Greco's death and our note. Invite him courteously to confirm details." "Kramer doesn't do courteous before lunch." "Then we shall educate him." I made the call. Kramer answered in his usual key of controlled irritation. "Don't tell me. Wolfe wants to clarify again." "He'd prefer cooperation. Greco's murder connects directly to your pedigree forgery lead. And we've got a new souvenir, a typewritten threat mailed to our client." A pause. "You got it there?" "Yep. Want to look?" "Yeah, but not now. I'll send Stebbins to pick it up. Tell Wolfe he was right about the forgery mess. Not that I'll admit it twice." "Your generosity overwhelms." He hung up. I relayed the message. Wolfe's expression didn't change, but there was the faintest upward curve at the corner of his mouth, the Wolfe equivalent of applause. "Inspector Kramer," he said softly, "may yet become civilized." Rita finished her list and handed it over. "That's everyone who uses the office, I'll swear to it." "Keep it," Wolfe said, glancing at the paper. Your signature would make it dangerous to possess. I'll have Archie make a copy." She hesitated, then said, "You think whoever sent that note killed Bernard?" "I think whoever killed Bernard now fears exposure," Wolfe answered, "and fear sharpens malice." She stood, still trembling. "Then what do I do?" "Obey me," he said. "Stay visible, predictable, and surrounded by witnesses. You are safer in the open than in retreat." She looked uncertain, but nodded. "All right." Fritz reappeared to escort her out. The door closed softly behind her, and the office felt suddenly wider. Wolfe leaned back, eyes half shut. "Loyalty, Archie, is a noble vice. The kennel world breeds it in dogs, but forgets it in people. Maybe that's because dogs don't type. Your levity is misplaced, but not unwelcome." He reached for his beer glass. "Typewritten threats, poisoned witnesses, and forged pedigrees, an elegant symmetry of deceit." "Symmetry's fine," I said, "but I prefer suspects who stay alive long enough to talk." "Alive or not, they speak." He sipped, contemplative. "We merely have to learn the language." He closed his eyes, signalling the day's end for conversation. I turned back to the typewriter, rolling in fresh paper. Outside, the rain started again, steady, deliberate, and loyal to its own schedule, unlike humans. At first light, I went straight to Kaiser's enclosure. Under the run, I found only packed clay and old straw. No stash, no tool, just a fresh scrape that said I was late by hours. The dogs were quieter than usual when I pulled into Crownline that morning, which was my first hint that something had gone sideways. Even the air smelled different, wet hay and gasoline instead of disinfectant and pedigree pride. I parked the Heron, grabbed my briefcase, and walked toward the main building like I belonged to the board of directors. After all, if you walk fast enough and look irritated, most people assume you own the place. Loretta Dean met me halfway down the gravel path, wringing her hands in a way that made me wish she'd find another hobby. "Oh, Mr. Goodwin, you're back." "Just for some routine paperwork," I said easily. "Mr. Wolfe wants Kaiser's diet logs, feed weights, protein content, all the glamorous details." Her brow creased. "Mr. Hume isn't here." "That's fine. I'll cope. I mean, he's gone. Called away suddenly last night. He didn't say where." That was hint number 2, and it came with a red ribbon of guilt around it. "I didn't know kennel managers had such exciting social lives," I said. "Mind if I take a look around while I wait for him not to come back?" She hesitated. "The police said—" "I'm not the police. I'm the one they ignore when I find things they missed." That won her silence, which was all the permission I needed. The main office was empty except for the faint smell of cold coffee and a stack of unfiled invoices. Hume's chair was pushed back, and a drawer hung open like it had been left in a hurry. I took a slow turn around the room, eyes catching details Wolfe would want. A missing ledger from the shelf, a mud smear on the floorboards, and the absence of the monogrammed briefcase I remembered from my first visit. Outside, the ground told a better story. Fresh tire tracks, 2 sets, one pulling in, one leaving faster, cut deep grooves through the wet earth behind the kennels. I followed them across the yard to a field that looked like it hadn't been mowed since Prohibition. The tracks ended beside a car half hidden by brush, its windows streaked with dew. It was Hume's coupe. The driver's door was ajar and the key still dangled in the ignition. I leaned in, careful not to smudge anything. The interior smelled faintly of dog and panic. On the passenger seat, golden hairs clung to the upholstery, retriever hair, the same kind Kramer's lab had found on the murder brush. I took out a handkerchief, lifted one, and folded it into my notebook. Then I checked the glove box, because that's where all good secrets hide. Inside were several folded papers, legal contracts typed on thick stationery. A quick skim told me everything I needed to know and nothing I liked. Agreements between Bernard Latham and Councilman Howard Cleves regarding financial sponsorship for kennel expansions and exhibition licenses. So that was the other CH. Not Hume after all, but Howard Cleves in print. Exhibition, I muttered. That's one way to spell laundering. I locked the glove box and took photostats of the contracts using my portable camera. I left the originals in place. Wolfe likes facts, not evidence chain debates. When I turned back toward the main building, Loretta was standing in the doorway, pale as milk. "Did you find something?" "Just proof that your boss liked paperwork," I said. "If Hume comes back, tell him Nero Wolfe sends his regrets and his curiosity." She didn't ask what that meant. She didn't have to. Back at the brownstone, the afternoon had settled in like an old cat, lazy and smug. Wolfe was in his chair, hands steepled, while Fritz hovered with a tray of sandwiches too delicate for human consumption. "You are late," Wolfe said. "I'm punctual by Westchester standards," I told him, dropping my briefcase on the desk. "And I brought souvenirs." "Explain." "Hume's missing. His car's not. Found it in a field with retriever hair on the seat, the same shade and texture as the one on the brush. Inside the glove box, a stack of legal contracts between Bernard Latham and a city politician named Howard Cleves." That got a twitch from Wolfe's eyebrows, the equivalent of an earthquake in his geography. "Cleves," he repeated, "councilman for the 18th District, member of the Kennel Club's advisory committee." "Right. The initials on the briefcase, CH, fit nicely too." "Indeed." He leaned back, eyes half closed. "The structure clarifies. Latham and Cleves, commerce disguised as canine refinement. The kennel as conduit for illicit exchange. Translation, dog shows as a front for washing bribes." "Crude but adequate," Wolfe said. Fritz cleared his throat delicately. "Lunch?" "Later," Wolfe said, waving him off. "I must bait a fish before it escapes the pond." That line had me curious. "Meaning?" He pushed a blank sheet of paper toward me. "Take dictation." I rolled in a fresh sheet of typing paper and poised the keys. Wolfe's tone shifted into what I privately call his invitation to doom voice. "Councilman Cleves, you are cordially invited to call upon me at your earliest convenience regarding a matter of mutual discretion. It concerns the recent death of your business associate, Mr. Bernard Latham, and the unfortunate irregularities now endangering your investments. I trust you will recognize the wisdom of discussing these matters privately before they reach less temperate ears. With professional courtesy, Nero Wolfe." I finished the letter and read it aloud. Wolfe nodded once. "Archie, send it by messenger. Special delivery. Cleves will come tonight or not at all." "Suppose he doesn't?" "Then he is either a fool or a corpse in waiting." I grinned. "You've got away with words, but they all come with hooks." "Hooks catch fish," Wolfe said, "and I intend to reel in a rather large one." I folded the letter, sealed it, and made a note to send it through our messenger service before dinner. Wolfe poured himself a beer from the cooler and studied the amber liquid like it contained prophecy. "The nexus of this case," he said slowly, "is not jealousy, not money, but reputation. Men like Cleves traffic in appearance, the illusion of purity. The kennel provided both symbol and smokescreen, the purity of bloodlines masking the rot beneath." "Sounds like half of Manhattan," I said. "True," he took a long sip. "But half of Manhattan does not poison witnesses or send threats on kennel stationery. Cleves will come, because vanity always does." "Should I alert Kramer?" "Not yet. Let the inspector toil in ignorance a little longer. It improves his temper when I relieve it later." I leaned back, lighting a cigarette. "You know, one of these days he'll stop letting you get away with that." Wolfe looked up from his glass, faint amusement in his eyes. "Archie, if that day arrives, civilization will have perished." Fritz reappeared, expression patient. "Lunch?" Wolfe exhaled, resigned. "Now." As Fritz left to serve it, I glanced at the sealed letter on the desk. A politician, a kennel, and a trail of dead men. Just another afternoon in the service of genius. The bell rang at 9:14 that evening, a minute too early for decency and too late for social calls. I opened the door to find Councilman Howard Cleves looking exactly as I'd imagined. Polished, perfumed, and so pleased with himself you could have used his grin as a reflector. His overcoat gleamed like wet marble, and his gloves probably cost more than Fritz's weekly grocery budget. "Mr. Goodwin," he extended a hand he didn't expect shaken. "Your employer sent me quite the intriguing letter." "Yeah, he has a way with words," I said, stepping aside. "Try not to trip over any truth on your way in. It's rare around here." Cleves gave me a tight smile, the kind that knows it's superior but indulges the help. He stepped into the brownstone and looked around like a realtor admiring his own portfolio. I led him into the office where Wolfe was seated behind his desk, monumental and motionless, a mountain of intellect with a napkin under it. "Councilman," Wolfe said, voice smooth and heavy, "you honor my roof." "I trust this is private," Cleves replied, taking the red leather chair opposite. "Your letter was direct." It was deliberate, Wolfe corrected. There are matters requiring clarity, and clarity is best achieved face-to-face. Beer, Councilman? No, thank you. Wise. Alcohol impairs articulation. Wolfe folded his hands, thumbs touching. You were acquainted with Bernard Latham. Cleves nodded, crossing one immaculate leg. Naturally. Latham ran an enterprise I had occasion to support. The Crown Line kennels were a point of civic pride, employment, tourism, charitable exhibitions. His death is unfortunate. Unfortunate, Wolfe repeated softly, and inconvenient. His bookkeeping was less refined than his breeding program. The councilman's smile froze. I beg your pardon? I seldom repeat myself, Wolfe said. The kennel's accounts were creative. Funds passed through shell committees, sometimes in your district. Perhaps, Councilman, you can explain how a public development grant for animal welfare ended as investment capital in a private kennel. Cleves blinked slowly, the way a cat does before it pounces. Mr. Wolfe, you're treading on dangerous ground. I'm here out of courtesy, not obligation. Courtesy? Wolfe's eyes half-lidded. You mistake me, sir. I invited you because I dislike wasting time. You have already been seen with Mr. Latham, and soon the press, those scavengers, will notice your signature on his partnership contracts. Better that we speak before interpretation becomes invention. Cleves's nostrils flared, but his voice stayed silky. My relationship with Latham was legitimate. Sponsorship, that's all. He offered to name a prize cup after me. Nothing criminal in good publicity. Archie's narration, the air thickened with arrogance and imported cologne. I kept my notebook handy, partly for notes, mostly as a shield from the fumes. And the forged pedigree documents, Councilman, I asked. Was that part of the publicity too? Cleves turned his head slowly, the way you look at something sticky that talked. Forged documents? Yes, Wolfe said, unmoved. Mr. Latham employed a forger, one Emmanuel Greco, to alter the birth records of his prize Dobermann and others. You were copied on several of those papers. That's absurd, Cleves snapped, colour rising. If there are copies, they're fraudulent. Indeed, Wolfe murmured. That is their defining trait. He let the silence stretch until even the orchids seemed to listen. Then he added, Greco was found dead 2 nights ago, poisoned. You, however, are still in vigorous health. Cleves's jaw tightened. Are you implying I imply nothing, Wolfe interrupted. Implication is the tool of fools. I state, those who could expose corruption in Crown Line kennels are systematically dying. First Latham, then Greco, and now Charles Hume has disappeared. That last name hit him like a slap. For a second his eyes darted left, toward the phone, then back to Wolfe. I don't know any Hume, he said. Too fast, too flat. Really? Wolfe leaned forward slightly, a rare concession to movement. He managed the kennel you funded. His name appears in every operational record, including one contract found in his automobile this morning, in company with your own. The councilman's knuckles whitened on the armrest. You have no right, Archie cut in. We're not the police, Mr. Cleves. That's why you're still breathing perfume instead of courthouse dust. He turned a glare on me. You're insolent. I get paid for it, I said. Not as much as you get paid for dog shows, but steady enough. Wolfe flicked his eyes toward me, a small rebuke, affectionate in its way. Archie, restrain yourself. Then to Cleves, your indignation, though practiced, is unconvincing. I invited you because you are intelligent. Prove me right by speaking truth. Cleves inhaled deeply, then smoothed his tie. Mr. Wolfe, you're overreaching. My political career is spotless. My involvement with Crown Line was charitable, not financial. I demand discretion. Any public association between my office and this sordid business could damage innocent people. Innocent? Wolfe's tone hardened. A man who launders reputation with blood cannot claim innocence. Cleves stood abruptly. You go too far, sir. Wolfe's voice sliced through the air. Sit. The single word cracked like a whip. To his credit, Cleves obeyed before he realized he had. That's when the phone rang. I picked it up. Goodwin. Kramer's voice came through, tight and low. Put Wolfe on. He's occupied charming a politician. This'll uncharm him. We found Hume. Alive? Hardly. East River, waited. Professional job. You can tell your boss his kennel lead's gone belly up. I covered the mouthpiece and turned to Wolfe. Kramer says they found Hume, East River, waited. Wolfe didn't move. His eyes flicked once, past me, past the orchids, to Cleves, who'd frozen mid-breath. "Ah," Wolfe murmured almost tenderly. "Thank you, Inspector." He gestured for me to hang up. I did. Then he turned to Cleves, who was still standing, every inch of him rigid except the twitch in his left cheek. "You seem disturbed," Wolfe observed. "Personal acquaintance, after all." "I told you, I never met him." "Then your nerves are commendably empathetic." Cleves swallowed hard. "You're twisting coincidences into accusations. I won't stay to be insulted." "As you wish," Wolfe said. "But do take care leaving. The press enjoys late-night photographs." Cleves opened his mouth, closed it again, and stormed toward the door. His footsteps were sharp against the carpet, authority trying to sound like dignity. When the door shut, Wolfe exhaled heavily, the way men do when logic meets corruption and both stink. "Well," I said, "if you'd wagged your finger, he'd have rolled over." Wolfe didn't smile, but his eyes glimmered. An apt metaphor, though crude. Cleves is guilty of something, perhaps not murder, but proximity to it. His vanity betrayed him. He twitched like a man hearing his own obituary. "Indeed." Wolfe leaned back, pressing fingertips together. "Kramer's timing was fortuitous. The revelation of Hume's death unmasked our councilman's composure. His reaction is as valuable as evidence." "So, what's next? Do we fetch Kramer and tie a bow on it?" "Pfui, we are not delivery boys. The beast must be drawn out, not cornered. A cornered beast bites. A drawn one exposes its hide." "Meaning we wait?" "Meaning," Wolfe said, "we dangle bait. Cleves believes himself secure. He will now act to preserve that illusion, and in doing so, reveal the mechanism of guilt." I sat back. "And what if the beast bites first?" He gave me a glance that mixed irritation with something quieter. Concern, maybe. "Then, Archie, you will duck." "That's comforting." He ignored me and reached for his notebook. Dictation. I rolled a fresh sheet into the typewriter. "To Inspector Kramer, the discovery of Charles Hume's body validates the hypothesis of organized concealment. I advise discreet observation of Councilman Howard Cleves. Do not confront him prematurely. Agitation breeds flight. I shall communicate when the time for exposure arrives." He paused. "Add, respectfully, Nero Wolfe." I finished typing and set it aside. "You know, someday Kramer's going to frame one of those letters instead of filing it." "Perhaps," Wolfe said, "though art appreciation is not his métier." Fritz entered quietly with the evening tray, beer, cheese, and the patience of a saint. "Dinner at 8, Mr. Wolfe." "Thank you." As Fritz withdrew, Wolfe poured his beer, watching the foam rise like a calm volcano. "Archie, note this. We now have a corpse in water, a forger in the grave, and a councilman in fear. Patterns, like pedigrees, are rarely pure." "Sure," I said, "but at least dogs don't vote." That earned the faintest snort, a wolf laugh, measured in air displacement rather than sound. He raised his glass. "To clarity," he said. I lifted mine, a ginger ale substitute. "And to collars tightening." He drank. I watched. Outside, Manhattan hummed the way only guilty cities can. The orchids upstairs breathed perfumed air, and somewhere downtown a councilman was deciding whether to sweat, run, or call his lawyer. I had money on sweat. There are few things in life more dangerous than Nero Wolfe in a patient mood. The following afternoon, the office had the hush of a lion's cage before feeding time. He sat there behind his desk, the telephone within reach, his expression that peculiar mix of serenity and anticipation that meant someone was about to be outmaneuvered with grammar and logic. The phone call had gone out that morning, a carefully phrased leak to Lon Cohen. "Wolfe's ready to name the killer. He only needs proof of loyalty." I typed it up as if it were gospel, and made sure Lon's newsroom got just enough bait to draw blood. Wolfe didn't elaborate. He rarely does when he's about to set a trap so elegant it should come with lace. At 3:42 p.m, the bell rang. Fritz appeared at the doorway, announcing, "Miss Rita Vance." She came in like fear wrapped in perfume, gloves half on, eyes wide, the kind of trembling you don't learn from acting lessons. I shut the door behind her and gave her my most cheerful grin. You heard the rumour mill's running, huh? Welcome to the lion's den. Mr. Wolfe, she gasped, stepping closer. I had to come. They'll kill me. Indeed, Wolfe's tone was glacial. Who precisely? The people behind all this. You said you'd found proof. Please, you must protect me. Wolfe gestured lazily to the big leather chair behind his desk. Sit down, Miss Vance. She hesitated, blinking. In your chair? Yes. The perspective may comfort you. Archie's narration. Watching anyone in Wolfe's chair is like watching a mouse stroll into a lion's den. It's the one seat in New York that guarantees discomfort unless your conscience is bulletproof. She sat slowly, like she expected it to bite. Wolfe folded his hands. Now, you have made considerable noise about your peril. Let us replace it with facts. You claim your life is in danger. From whom? I told you, she whispered. They know you're close to solving it. I am close, he said. So close that I can see the final deception clearly, because it was not conceived by a politician or a kennel master, but by a desperate woman. Her breath caught. What are you saying? That the note you brought me, the threat to your life, was written by your own hand. She shot to her feet. That's not true. Sit, Wolfe commanded, and she did. The paper was Crown-Line stationery, yes, but from your personal file, not the office stock. The typeface matches the machine in your apartment, not the kennel, and your fingerprints are impressed on the typewriter ribbon, Miss Vance. She went pale, fingers clutching the arms of the chair. No, I only... You only sought sympathy, Wolfe continued, voice calm as a metronome. A desperate bid to appear victim rather than predator. But the evidence accumulates as relentlessly as gravity. Archie leaned against the filing cabinet, arms folded. He means you dropped the mask, lady, and it's showing teeth. Stop it, she cried. You don't know. On the contrary, Wolfe said. I know precisely. You and Charles Hume were partners in avarice. You discovered the councilman's investment in Crown-Line and realized the value of blackmail. Latham, your employer, refused to join you. You quarreled. Later that night, you struck him with the brass grooming brush. Her lips parted, but no sound came. You then arranged the scene to implicate yourself, lightly, enough to seem wronged, not guilty. But when Greco learned of the forgery scheme, he demanded his portion. You paid with poison. No, she shook her head violently. He blackmailed me, yes, but I didn't mean to... Wolfe raised a hand. Meaning is irrelevant. Consequence is not. You silenced him, as you did Latham, and now you come to me to cloak yourself in virtue. She began to cry then. Not pretty tears, but broken sobs that didn't belong in the brownstone. The chair creaked under her as though it disapproved. Archie's narration. Wolfe didn't move. He never does when someone cracks. It's like watching a chess piece realize it's trapped and waiting for the inevitable hand to lift it. Mr. Wolfe, she gasped. I loved Bernard. You think I could kill someone I loved? Yes, Wolfe said softly. Because love, Miss Vance, is the most convenient disguise greed ever wears. She stared at him, breathing raggedly. Charles said we'd only frighten him, that Latham would pay if he thought Cleves might lose everything. But Bernard called me vile. He said he'd expose us both. I didn't mean to. I only wanted him to listen. Her words dissolved into sobs again. I went to the desk, pulled the box of tissues Fritz keeps for emotional emergencies, and set it within her reach. You see, Archie, Wolfe said, our species has an infinite capacity for self-justification. She will call it accident, passion, coercion. It was none of those. It was the arithmetic of greed. I frowned. That's elegant, but the cops will still call it homicide. She'll tell them, Wolfe murmured. Rita's head lifted, eyes swollen. You'll turn me in? I will deliver truth to Inspector Kramer. Whether you accompany it depends on your honesty now. She looked at me, pleading. Archie, please don't let him. Sorry, I said gently. My batting average for mercy is low when the scoreboard says murder twice. Her shoulders slumped. Greco found out everything. He came to me that night, said he'd tell Cleves unless I paid. I begged him to stop. He laughed, said he'd send a copy of the pedigree to the Gazette. I poured the drink to calm him. I didn't think it would poison him, I supplied. Her hands covered her face. I only meant to scare him. I was afraid of Cleves, afraid of everyone. Wolfe's sigh was soft but heavy, the sound of intellect bowing briefly to pity. "Miss Vance," he said, "you have made your confession. That spares me the vulgar necessity of witnessing further deception. Archie, call Inspector Kramer." I went to the phone, but she lunged from the chair, panic flaring. "Please don't. If the police, Cleves will destroy me." "Phooey!" Wolfe's voice snapped like frost. "Cleves has destroyed himself. Hume's death ensures it. He will face his own reckoning. Yours begins here." She sagged, defeated, and Wolfe motioned me to hold. "Archie, wait, let her finish." Her head lifted, eyes red but suddenly clear. "You don't understand. Hume didn't die because of me. He went to Cleves. He was going to expose him. I swear I didn't know until I read the papers." "You expect me to believe," Wolfe said, "that every corpse orbiting this kennel fell by coincidence?" "No," she whispered. "I expect you to believe I stopped being human when Bernard died. After that, everything was just noise." For a moment, even Wolfe said nothing. Then quietly, "Miss Vance, remorse does not absolve, but it dignifies." She nodded slowly, brokenly, and sank back into the chair. "What happens now?" "Now," Wolfe said, pressing the bell cord, "you wait." Fritz appeared, grave as a butler in a tragedy. "Yes, Mr. Wolfe?" "Coffee for Miss Vance," Wolfe said, "and call Inspector Kramer. Tell him Miss Vance will make a statement." Fritz inclined his head and left. Rita sat trembling, staring at the desk blotter as though it held her sentence. Wolfe leaned back, closed his eyes, and exhaled. It wasn't the sigh of triumph I'd expected. It was quieter, almost weary. Archie's narration. It wasn't often you heard compassion sneak past Wolfe's guard, but it slipped out then, like a single note from a locked piano. He didn't gloat, didn't quote Latin. He just sat there, heavy and human, while the sound of justice shuffled closer up the front steps. I lit a cigarette and turned toward him. "You know, for a man who hates dogs, you sure spent this case proving people are worse." He opened one eye. "That, Archie, is the eternal moral. Civilization breeds both obedience and deceit, purebred or not." "Nice epilogue," I said. "You should print it on the kennel's next brochure." He almost smiled. "Phooey, type it in your report." Fritz returned with coffee. Behind him, the low rumble of a car outside signaled Kramer's arrival. Wolfe didn't move. He just said, "Archie, open the door." I did. The inspector entered, face grim, cigar chewing like it owed him rent. His eyes took in Rita's tears, the coffee cup, and Wolfe's calm bulk behind the desk. "All right," he muttered. "You've done it again." Wolfe inclined his head. "Miss Vance has done it, Inspector. I merely listened." Kramer's jaw worked. Yeah, I'll take it from here." He turned to Rita, voice gentler than expected. "Miss, you'll ride with us downtown. You'll get to talk." She nodded faintly, rising. "Thank you, Mr. Wolfe," she whispered. Wolfe's eyes opened fully, gaze unreadable. "Do not thank me. Thank truth, though it is a brutal friend." Kramer guided her out, closing the door softly behind them. Silence settled, heavy as winter. I stubbed out my cigarette and looked at Wolfe. "That's that?" "For now," he said, "until civilization breeds again." He reached for his beer. I fetched it without asking, chilled glass and all. As he took the first sip, I couldn't resist. "You know, I think that chair's going to need exercising." "Perhaps," Wolfe murmured, "but it served its purpose. It is, after all, a fine trap." If you ever want to see the difference between guilt and justice, stick around Nero Wolfe's office when the police show up. At 7:58 that evening, just before dinner, the brownstone felt too small to hold all the authority pressing against it. Kramer arrived first, raincoat unbuttoned, cigar clenched like a warning label. Stebbins trailed him with a notebook and that look cops get when they're pretending not to gawk at Wolfe's rug. Rita Vance sat in the red chair, pale but quiet, her hands folded neatly on her lap. She looked more like someone waiting for confession than arrest. Wolfe, behind his desk, might have been carved from marble if marble drank beer and quoted Latin. Kramer stopped in the middle of the rug. "All right, Wolfe. Let's get it done before my ulcers start filing complaints." "Of course, Inspector," Wolfe said evenly. "Miss Vance has made a full statement. I have taken the liberty of dictating a formal précis for your record." "Of course you have," Kramer grunted. Archie's narration. If the day ever comes when Wolfe leaves something undone, I'll check for the apocalypse before coffee. Wolfe reached for the sheaf of typewritten pages beside him. You will find this concise, but sufficient. Kramer accepted it, skimmed a line and snorted softly. You always write like you're addressing a jury in heaven. I have little faith in lower jurisdictions, Wolfe replied. That earned a grunt that might have been amusement. Stebbins hovered behind, eyes flicking from Wolfe to Rita. We taking her now, Inspector? In a minute. Kramer looked at her. You ready, Miss Vance? She nodded once, faintly. Yes, Inspector. Good, he said softer. You'll get a fair shake. Wolfe's reports make it impossible not to. Wolfe's eyebrows rose an imperceptible millimetre. High praise, Inspector. Don't get spoiled, Kramer muttered. You still make my job hell, but you make it clean. That got him a full incline of Wolfe's head. We serve the same God, Inspector, reason. For a moment, nobody spoke. Outside, a car horn bled through the rain. Inside, only Fritz's distant clatter in the kitchen reminded us civilization hadn't collapsed. Then Kramer nodded towards Stebbins. All right, let's go. Stebbins stepped forward with the cuffs. Rita didn't resist. She rose slowly, still graceful despite the ruin around her. Mr. Wolfe, she said, voice small. Thank you for letting me tell it myself. Wolfe inclined his head again, solemn. Truth, Miss Vance, is the least we owe the dead. She blinked hard but didn't cry. Stebbins led her out, and the sound of the front door closing had the finality of a gavel. Kramer lingered a moment longer, tucking Wolfe's report under his arm. You sure you don't want to run for DA, Wolfe? You've got the ego for it. Phooey, Wolfe said. Public office requires compromise. I prefer sanity. Kramer smirked. Suit yourself. Good night. And just like that, they were gone, the law retreating back into the city it served, dragging its weary victories along. Wolfe let out a long breath that deflated the air of ceremony. He reached for his beer. Archie, note that Inspector Kramer continues to mature. One day he may achieve serenity. Not in this lifetime, I said, returning to my desk, though I admit he looked almost human when he said you make his job clean. Indeed, the faint aroma of respect. Careful, I said. You'll get used to it. That earned me a glance sharp enough to slice cheese. Then Wolfe leaned back, savouring his beer. The clock ticked toward 8 and I could hear Fritz setting the dining table. The brownstone was sliding back into its natural rhythm, the same rhythm that outlasts murder, scandal, and the occasional politician. Archie's narration. If you've never seen Nero Wolfe after a case concludes, it's like watching a storm cloud decide it's bored with thunder. The air clears, but you can still smell the ozone. He said, Archie, tomorrow at 10 you will deliver a copy of the statement to Lon Cohen. He will print a factual account, nothing lurid. I will not have Kaiser's name sullied. The dog? Yes, the beast was blameless. He deserves exoneration. I grinned. Well, the city will sleep easier knowing one Dobermann's reputation survived. You are glib, Wolfe said, but decency, however unfashionable, deserves exercise. Sure, I said. I'll tell Lon the headline should read, Purebred cleared in poison scandal. That'll sell papers. Phooey. Wolfe closed his eyes, signalling conversation recess. Fritz! Fritz appeared instantly at the doorway, towel draped like a medal of office. Dinner is served, Mr. Wolfe. Excellent. Wolfe rose, slowly but with the dignity of a man for whom standing was a deliberate art. He turned to me. You will join me, of course. Wouldn't dream of missing it, I said. Besides, Fritz claims the roast is better when eaten in triumph. Fritz, Wolfe murmured, rarely exaggerates. We moved to the dining room, the same table that had seen more strategy than the Pentagon. Dinner was perfect, of course, and Wolfe ate with the calm of a man restoring the natural order of the universe. Halfway through, he paused, dabbed his lips, and said, Loyalty, Archie, is a treacherous virtue. It breeds nobility and corruption in equal measure. Like dog breeding? He gave a small smile. Precisely. After dinner, he retired upstairs for his evening orchid session. The routine was immutable. 4 to 6, morning and evening, always sacred, always serene. I stayed behind in the office, typing up the day's notes while the house settled into its familiar, quiet heartbeat. The city outside hummed its tired lullaby of taxis and rain. By 10 o'clock, I'd finished the paperwork and switched on the radio. The Gazette Bulletin was already running with the story, Councilman Cleave's face's inquiry, kennel scandal, deepens. Wolfe's line had worked its usual magic. The press credited the police, which meant Wolfe would sleep soundly. Archie's narration. For once the headlines were almost civilized. They cleared Kaiser's name, but not Rita's, and that was about as close to fairness as Manhattan ever gets. I shut off the radio and stretched. The office smelled faintly of orchids from upstairs, mixed with Wolfe's beer and Fritz's coffee. Civilization in liquid form. A soft thump drew my eyes to the dining room. Fritz's tabby, spoiled, smug, and unrepentant, was curled under the table, purring loud enough to register as contentment. I couldn't help but grin. "Well, pal," I said to him, "looks like you're the only living creature in this house with a spotless pedigree." He yawned and went back to sleep. When Wolfe came down later, he found me still at the typewriter. "Archie," he said, "it is past 11. "Just tying up loose ends," I said. "Want me to mail Kramer a thank you note?" His eyes narrowed. "Do not bait the inspector." "Wouldn't dream of it," I said, "though I might send him a Christmas card signed Reason." He groaned softly. "Confound it. Go to bed." "Right after I lock the safe. Can't have you losing another civilization to disorder." Wolfe muttered something in French that I didn't catch, probably just as well. He turned toward the stairs, his silhouette enormous against the dim light. "Archie," he said, pausing halfway up, "have Fritz prepare eggs for breakfast. Soft-boiled, 2 only." "That's restraint," I said. "You going on a diet?" "Fui," a gesture of equilibrium. And with that, he disappeared toward his orchids, leaving me with the typewriter's hum and the faint sense that the world, crooked though it was, had been nudged a little straighter. I closed the notebook, poured myself a ginger ale, and leaned back. Archie's final narration. In the end, the case of the Doberman in Wolfe's chair wasn't about dogs or pedigrees or politics. It was about loyalty, the kind that bites both ways. Rita's loyalty turned to greed, Cleave's to fear, and Wolfe's to truth. And me? I stick with Wolfe. He may be impossible, but at least he's housebroken. I raised my glass toward the sleeping cat. "To justice," I said. The cat didn't answer, which was fine. Some creatures know when the talking's over.